Okay, we're doing it. We're back. Let's talk Taskmaster. For those unfamiliar, the panel show format is both huge in the UK and simple in design. It's light entertainment, it's non-scripted, and from a production standpoint, it's relatively easy to produce. Shows like Would I Lie to You and Hypothetical are incredibly cheap to shoot and easy to replicate. You just need a bunch of comedians brought on stage, and outside of a relatively straightforward setup that varies from show to show, the comedians riff off the setups, and it's great. And you laugh, and then the next show is much of the same. And in the UK, it's like a revolving door of comedians who all sort of run panel show circuits. It's a little incestuous if I'm being entirely honest, as the guest of one show is often the host of another, but I digress, as Taskmaster is different. Yes, there are 5 comedians brought in front of an audience, as well as the titular Taskmaster, Greg Davies, and his assistant, and the show's creator, Little Alex Horne, but the show manages to spice itself from being just another in-studio faffing about by throwing in pre-recorded and edited tasks being completed by the comedians. Now, the tasks all range from the relatively simple, like make the tallest tower out of cardboard boxes in a fixed amount of time, to the more creative and abstract, like painting a rainbow, except that everyone is in the dark and their paint is condiments, so they're going to be needing to paint by smell. It's a show that rewards the players for taking risks in the most spectacular fashion, so even failures are hilarious, and just every comedian on the show recognizes and embraces the absurdity of it all, making for a fairly bulletproof format. More on that fairly later. Those pre-taped segments are enjoyable in their own right, edited to absolute perfection, but they're punctuated further by the panel banter in between the segments as Greg and Alex and the various comedians comment and question their performances before points are awarded, both contributing to the winner of that episode, but also for the whole overall series. On top of the pre-recorded tasks, bookending each episode are the prize task and the final task of the show, which are performed live in front of the audience. The prize task is the perfect getting to know you moment. There's a theme that all the comedians must adhere to and bring in an item that they think best exemplifies it. And thus, all of these things become the prize for whoever wins the episode. One show might have everyone vying for the most valuable thing, and the next might be the wettest, allowing for each comedian a few introductory moments, establishing sensibilities, and also for anyone who hasn't seen the show before to immediately understand the roles that Greg and Alex play in the competitive side of the show, as Alex is more analytical and mousy, and Greg can be blustery and domineering, but also a big goof and a touch reflective under the right circumstances. Now, I know this show sounds remarkably dumb, and you're not wrong. It is. But Taskmaster is also an incredible examination of the way we think and how humans perform under pressure that I think we all can relate to, and that's what adds to the show's appeal across its multiple series. There's also some exceptional examples of lateral thinking displayed, and it's always amusing and rewarding to think while watching how you might approach some of the tasks presented. Beyond just episode-to-episode tasks and the snowballing of running jokes and callbacks in both episodes and through the entire series, with each victory, loss, or even disqualification, you really do find yourself invested in this panel of 5 quote-unquote competitors. There have been countless series where I have started not knowing someone or even being turned off by a comedian, but by the finale, and I know how wild this sounds, I see how they've grown through their experience on the show, and I really am rooting for them. Overly competitive comedians might watch themselves in playback and find themselves apologizing for behavior. Others may realize that they often get tunnel vision when a time limit is introduced. And to see fellow comedian competitors compliment, counter-argue logic, and periodically take a crack at one another in a playful way is an extra layer of what makes Taskmaster so entertaining to watch. And in most cases, Taskmaster has offered a good time. In addition to a successful run on British television, Taskmaster has been replicated in Norway, New Zealand, Denmark, Finland, and has upcoming versions in Portugal and Croatia. I've actually watched a handful of these variants, and even with subtitles, the comedy still comes across. There also have been Taskmaster books, board games, and through the UK YouTube channel, they've actually engaged with the public in some fun ways during the pandemic with some hashtag home tasking, where Alex would pose different tasks, and then Greg and Alex would highlight some of their favorites, which is a really awesome way to just be supporting their community that supports them so strongly. But for every 5 points awarded, there are always those that only get 1 measly point or are even disqualified. Such has been the case with Taskmaster's attempt in Spain, Belgium. Taskmaster Germany only shot 2 test episodes before scrapping the project entirely. And then there's the one that those who know the show probably know I've been circling the drain for a little bit on, and that's the American version of Taskmaster. Now, the US spin on Taskmaster took a lot of the things that I mentioned being brilliant elements of the show and, in the nicest way possible, hobbled the format so the end result is a shell of the show, and then further stumbled itself up where it likely mattered most. I'm not sure why Comedy Central thought that after 5 series on Dave at a runtime of 50 minutes, they should lop the showtime in half, but in 2017, I guess that was the thing to do. This singular decision not only does a disservice to everyone involved, but it fails to understand what makes the show work. For starters, there's a very apparent failure to trust the audience to come back, as every single episode provides a "what is Taskmaster" explanation over the opening sequence, rather than a quick, quippy intro from Reggie Watts, who served as the American counter to Greg, which we'll talk about, but not now. The show then catapults through naming the guests, but we only have 22 minutes of programming, so the prize task, which would be our first opportunity to get to know all of the panelists, is thrown out the window, and instead we only speak to one of the contestants who's ponying up a collective prize for that particular episode, because Comedy Central seems to believe that the tasks are the star of the show, which they're not entirely wrong on, but it doesn't really make sense because they cut the runtime down, so there are now less tasks, and because we didn't get to know the panelists, because there is now no prize task really, we're then thrown into a chaotic task with little understanding of who anyone really is. So then our first real interaction with any of the guests is, them arguing over who should be getting points, and since we don't have a meaningful understanding of who any of them... Oh, what's that? We don't have time for any banter because we need more tasks? Well, it's time for another one. Let's bullet train through that one, award some points as quickly as we can, because now we're already nearing the end of the show and we need a live studio audience task. Which, yes, these live studio audience tasks and the tasks themselves in isolation do work, but we're running at this breakneck speed through panel segments. Nobody gets a chance to find their footing or common ground with one another, so everyone is coming in with their own disparate energies and never really appropriately gelling. Now, I know many people blame Lisa Lampanelli and Kate Berlant for the show's failure, but I don't believe it's as simple as that, as there have been plenty of brusque, competitive, and abrasive personalities on the UK variant. Ian Sterling, Kerry Godliman, and Ed Gamble immediately come to mind. But with all 3 of them, we've had portions during the panel sections to experience what I'll best describe as the "whose line is it anyway" effect. Because everything you're seeing is made up and the points don't matter. And you even see that exact thing periodically happen in later episodes of the panel portions of the American Taskmaster. Though I admittedly wouldn't encourage you to watch just to confirm these moments. As previously stated, it's a very unbalanced show, and those moments very quickly get railroaded by the poor formatting choice. While I won't necessarily say their instincts are 100% for the show, and neither are my cup of tea for their own personal careers, there are moments of playfulness and even humility periodically eking through from both Kate and Lisa. You even see moments where Lisa and Kate are supportive of their fellow competitors. But whoa, I am getting too in the weeds on just a handful of points. Let's go back to making broad sweeping generalizations about why the show didn't work. Reggie Watts is a creative dude who I thoroughly enjoy, but because of the show's formatting, he's not really allowed to do much of anything, and as a result, he never really finds his own spin on the Taskmaster role, and it actually appears that he's leaning on Alex Horne, who managed to get a free trip to America and return to the assistant role. Do I think that Reggie would have been a better contestant than the Taskmaster? Yeah, 100%. But I'd also say that he likely would have made for a better assistant. But Michael, what does that mean for Alex Horne if he isn't the assistant? That's simple, my dear question-asking friend. He's the Taskmaster. Yes, it's a bold move, but there are a couple of reasons that I make the suggestion. Alex is the creator of the show, and then that adds a fun narrative wrinkle where he's actually has elevated status, but across the pond, which I'm sure Greg would needle him for time and time again. But also, from a production standpoint, this would also reduce a ton of strain on Alex, as he wouldn't need to be present for every single task shoot. Because, in all honesty, if the US Taskmaster were a hit, it would have actually probably hurt production for the UK Taskmaster, or Alex would have needed to choose. And we all know from the Great British Bake Off, people do not take those sort of comedian replacements lightly. So okay, if Alex is the Taskmaster, what does that mean for the assistant if it's not Reggie Watts? Well, I have a few different thoughts there. I think the most obvious one is to replicate a similar dynamic of Alex and Greg, but in a different way. The fun narrative would be that Alex is trying to exert authority as the Taskmaster and ultimately does have the final say, but he's then shackled with an assistant who undercuts him in some way. You could go the cynical route and have it be someone like Aubrey Plaza. You could swap out some of that cynical, but keep the dryness with a dash more goofiness and go with Nick Offerman. Or you could lean into the even more outlandish and wildcard territory with someone like Dave Bautista, Tracy Morgan, or Andy Richter, which I know all of those sound like kind of strange choices, but if you imagine them when paired with Alex and how they'd kind of meld with his sensibilities while then also being involved in the task directly, that could lead to some magical moments. Now, admittedly, I might be going too big with some of those names, but that did also make me think of duos that would fit really well in the role in case Alex weren't doing it. And in thinking of Andy Richter, honestly, with him as the assistant and Conan O'Brien as the Taskmaster, I mean, I feel that makes a lot of sense and ticks quite a few of the boxes. If you can think of any comedic duos, let me know in the comments. And then I thought more of it, and there's an alternative to those alternatives, still with the angle of Alex being the Taskmaster, but to add an extra bit of zest, each episode could feature a different celebrity assistant who then helps Alex make decisions. This, however, would create a level of rigidity in terms of editing and overall production, as it would certainly lock our tasks to certain episodes, so certain narratives couldn't play out if that were at all possible. But that would then grant producers with a shiny new thing to advertise for each episode, because everybody loves a celebrity guest, even if it's a celebrity assistant. You get it. As to the other broader casting, which I've sort of spoken on, I don't feel that while the talent in the US show was a grab bag with the already mentioned comedians of Kate and Lisa and then Ron Funches, but also DJ Dylan Francis and actor Freddie Highmore, that hodgepodge doesn't necessarily work against the show. The tasks themselves really are bulletproof as long as you've got even a halfway competent editor, and the UK version has succeeded with its New Year treat specials, which pull celebrities from all over the place, from dancers to journalists to baronesses, to great effect. But the thing that unifies them all is that they are comfortable laughing at themselves, not just laughing at others, because Taskmaster is a show that humbles, and by giving everyone some space to breathe and know that it's a safe space to laugh, I think the show could have been truly successful. The point is, Taskmaster isn't just a dumb panel show about comedians doing silly tasks. It's actually a lot deeper, as it's inadvertently an exploration of the human experience and how we all just need to laugh at ourselves a little more. I mean, think about the past handful of days. Even in the most mundane of circumstances, our collective lives are full of Taskmaster moments, but we're just lacking in having a Greg and Alex present to sort of call out the silliness. How many times have you been under a time crunch and done something that you thought was oh so clever, only to have it implode on you moments later? Or when you've needed to be a little creative about a solution because the obvious and necessary thing just wasn't available to you. The greatest gift that Taskmaster offers us is the ability to be self-aware of life's humor, even if it isn't for a shiny 5 points. And that is pretty dang special. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Taskmaster. I'd highly encourage you to check out the show. Also, I'll certainly never be mad if you happen to pick up a copy of my comic in physical form, because there's a limited number of those. Oh, in case you were curious, my top 5 series go 7, 11, 12, 5, 4, and I honestly could talk about the show so much longer, but I won't. Guess I'll walk off this way again. Bye!